The Senate will please come to order. This morning, it's my pleasure to welcome for today's devotional exercise, Reverend Kenton of the Shaoshan Temple of East Calais. Welcome, Reverend. The floor is yours.
Today is Friday, April 15th. It is Good Friday, the day Christians remember Jesus' death. On the Muslim calendar, today is the middle of the month of Ramadan. This is the time of year of Vesak, when Buddhists celebrate Buddha's birthday. On the Jewish calendar, Passover begins tonight. Of course, April 15th is also often associated with paying taxes. And as the grass turns green and the crocuses bloom, it is nearly the full moon, the pink full moon of April. This convergence of events and symbolism highlighting today as a time of holiness, a time of remembering great influences and teachings, a time of hope and a time of giving. Multiple traditions marking today as an important day, recognizing both the fragility and the resilience of life, and acknowledging all that has come before to make this moment what it is. We join with people around the world and through the centuries to regard today, this tender early spring day, as valuable. To regard today, this tender early spring day, as special. And in a sense, every day is a special day. Every day is an important day. Every day is a holy day. Today, most of all, because today is here now. Now, today, this moment is when action is possible. Our actions, words, way of being today become our character, become our history, become the history of the state of Vermont. Our actions, words, way of being today shape our destiny, shape our future, shape the future of our children. May we, with gratitude for the past and care for the future, vividly live this once-in-a-lifetime day today. May we fully engage with what it has given us to do in this moment. May we be wholeheartedly present today, this holy day, April 15th, 2022. San shi shi fu shi san bu sa mo ko sa mo ko ho cha ho ro mi.
Thank you. Wonderful. Are there any announcements this morning? We have a number of referrals under Rule 31. House Bill 265, an act relating to the Office of the Child, Youth, and Family Advocate, being on the calendar for notice and affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to as Appropriations. H464, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to the program being on the calendar for notice and affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is also referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H515, an act relating to banking, insurance, and securities being on the calendar for notice and affecting the expenditures of the state is referred to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31. H711, an act relating to the creation of the Opioid Settlement Advisory Committee and the Opioid Abatement Special Fund being on the calendar for notice and affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H720, an act relating to the system of care for individuals with developmental disabilities being on the calendar for notice and affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. We do have a House bill on the calendar for reference H741, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the City of St. Albans pursuant to temporary Rule 44A. H741 is now referred to the Committee on Rules. Thank you. To the orders of the day. We have on the calendar for action H159, an act related to community and economic development and workforce revitalization. Previously, an act related to creating the Better Places program. It was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth on pages 2569 to 2609 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports that the recommendation of amendment of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs be amended as set forth on pages 2609 to 2611 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then further referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports the recommendation of amendment of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs be amended as set forth on pages 2611 to 2614 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of H159.
H159, Act relating to community and economic development and workforce revitalization.
The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sirotkin, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. May I speak to the strike all amendment as well as the bill?
You may.
Madam President, this is a big bill. It's a big bill in its length. It's 71 pages. At the time we received the bill late last year. Thank you. On this bill, it's a big bill in its spending. Governor proposed this year, I would say roughly about $130 million in economic development suggestions. Our committee and the bill before you brought that down to $90 million. And in the time that ensued since we voted it out of committee, the pressures of the budget have forced us to reduce that further down to about $50 million. It's also a big bill in its breadth. Covers the proverbial waterfront, from recruiting and retaining new Vermonters to work in our state, take advantage of the nationwide COVID immigration and immigration that's taking place, and the new premium we see of people being able to work from home remotely. It also covers financially assisting our small businesses recover from what hopefully will be their last phases, to allowing us smaller, more rural towns to take advantage of creative financing to build small infrastructure projects in their villages and surrounding neighborhoods. to increasing tax credits for our designated downtown improvements and extending that ability to smaller neighborhoods. It also, once again, explores the unique nature of our state as a premier location for filmmaking. It raises the minimum wage to $15, as we passed in this body and the other chamber 4 years ago, only to have that vetoed. It establishes a COVID relief fund to help employers and workers alike who have had trouble making ends meet and they have lost their paychecks due to isolation and such, notably recently during the Omicron surge. And it also keeps our commitment we made last year to those who lost their jobs through no fault of their own with a small weekly supplement to their unemployment checks. Being such a diverse bill, we have divided our committee's report into 4 parts, and I will briefly go first. Madam President, direct the Senate to the purpose section of the bill on page 2569. I'll just read it. The purpose of this act is to address the negative economic impacts of COVID-19 on Vermont's economy, employers, workers, and families, while simultaneously leveraging opportunities to grow Vermont's economy. Madam President, I believe this bill does all of these and does so in a balanced fashion, helping both our working families and businesses, our economy alike. With that, I would like to yield to the Senator from Franklin to cover sections 2 and 3 of the bill.
The Senator from Franklin, Senator Brock is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Section 2 of the bill deals with something that we've spoken about in this chamber on many times before. That is the new worker relocation program. This was a program that was begun in 2018, in which we focused first on people who lived out of state who could relocate to Vermont to fill a job that would be performed for that outside employer. An idea to bring employees into Vermont who would bring revenue into Vermont, but the revenue would be paid by employers located elsewhere. The next year, we expanded the program to a new worker relocation program to deal with employers who are located in Vermont and provide, again, a stipend for people to come to work for those employers, those Vermont employers who had jobs that they couldn't fill. This section 2 of the bill is an amendment to the new program that we established, which combined last year, as I recall, both the new worker relocation program and the remote worker relocation program into a single program. Now, there's always a question about programs like this of, did they in fact work? What result did we get? And one of the things that we asked the Department of Financial Regulation to do was to go and examine whether or not these things worked and whether or not we got, as we anticipated, a return on investment for bringing those people in. And the results were quite favorable in terms of what the consultant reported back. Of the 140 participants in the 2018 program, they helped spur the creation of 52 new indirect jobs, 2.5 million in wages, and 7.6 million in economic benefit to Vermont. 167 participants in the 2019 program spurred the creation of 63 new jobs, 3.1 million in wages, and 9.5 million in annual economic impact. These programs created 419,000 and 527,000 in annual state tax revenue in 18-19, considering appropriations for the program were only $500,000 in 18 and 670,000 in 2019. In other words, these programs pay for themselves within 2 years. I don't know a whole lot of programs that we see coming through this body that actually pay for themselves ever, much less in 2 years. And that's what these programs did. Now, this is not without controversy. Everybody doesn't agree with the numbers. And there have been discussions, the state auditor, for example, questions this program as he does things like Tift programs of, well, how do you know this economic activity wouldn't happen even if you didn't incent it? it's hard to argue with that other than to look at the results with your own eyes and look at what's happened before we had this program. Did we have the influx of people taking these jobs or didn't we? Things like Tift programs, you could apply the same. I go to St. Albans downtown and I look at it 20 years ago and I look at the fact that we have a Tift program since then. I could believe lightning would have struck. And these things would have happened spontaneously without these incentive programs because you can't actually prove absolutely that A led to B. But what we did do in these various studies, looking back and forth, we surveyed people. We surveyed the people who moved and we asked them. Now again, that's not scientifically accurate in totality. People might not tell you the truth. But when we asked people, the vast majority of them, or the majority of them, said that this program, these programs were a factor in their decision. They might not have been the factor, there may have been other things at play. How much of a factor this was this a 90% factor or was it a 10% factor? It's difficult to tell. But what it does give us, who've looked at this program in detail, comfort with, is this is a program that works, that helps Vermont, that boosts our economy, and above all, our major problem, if you talk to almost any employer in Vermont right now, we don't have enough people. We have to get more people into our workforce. This program gets more people into our workforce. That's what we do in Section 2. But what we did in Section 2 specifically is we made a couple of changes. The changes, I think, are helpful and significant. One, we addressed some of the concerns about do the programs have enough guardrails around them to ensure that people aren't moving to Vermont and then perhaps applying for the program saying that if they get the money, they'll move to Vermont. So we included in Section 2 something to direct ACCD to adopt procedures to initially improve a grant application, but to verify its eligibility and then make payment only after the employee moves to Vermont. So that was one major guardrail. The second thing this does is we amended the bill section to remove the requirement that an applicant be employed in any specific occupation. What we had before were specific occupational categories that were perceived to be in demand. And one of the problems that we found is we had a lot of occupations that were in demand that we forgot to put in. And so this really removes it. For example, we didn't get any plumbers. We didn't get any electricians. We didn't get certain kinds of medical specialties. We didn't get certain types of construction workers, all of which are in real demand. So we removed that from this bill. And again, we still have virtually a shortage of almost every kind of employee in Vermont. And this is designed to address that. Section 3 of the bill includes something which we're calling a Think Vermont Regional Recruitment and Relocation Network. One of the things from the consulting report and from our experience tells us that we can bring the horse to water, but unless we have somebody telling him where the trough is, the employee may not drink. And what this does is it makes that connection. It says that the best way to capitalize on the advertising, the marketing, the state-to-state programs, and other kind of programs we have that introduce people to Vermont, that bring them to the point of perhaps even thinking of moving here, we've got to, in effect, close that sale. And the way to close that sale, based on both the consultant's report and also some practical study based on a pilot principally in Windham County in Brattleboro that was designed to prove the point, is to say, what kind of local support do you provide? How do you bring a person into a community who's never been here before and sees the picture of Vermont and perhaps has come here on vacation and thinks it may be a great place, but how do they know? And unless you can make that connection, and that connection needs to be made on a local basis of where can I live? What jobs are open that fit my skill set? How do I integrate into the community? What's the school system like? And that's a hands-on relationship to, in effect, close that sale and make sure that it's successful, not just to get the person in the door, but to make sure that the person stays. In other words, ours is not just a relocation program, it's a retention program to retain that person in our workforce. Section 3 of the bill is designed to address that by specifically providing some structure in this Think Vermont Regional Relocation or Recruitment Relocation Network. It directs the Department of Tourism and Marketing the funding that's appropriated in Section 15 to design and implement a regional marketing network, working with over 12 regional partners selected through an RFP process to attract new residents to the state and to generate leads for this regional relocation network. I would like to now yield to the senator from Windsor, Senator Flex.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam President. I will be addressing sections 4 and 5 in this bill, and you can find them in today's calendar beginning on page 2574. These sections address economic development priorities this chamber has previously supported. These sections lay out 2 major investment areas needed for the recovery of Vermont's economy. One supports businesses hardest hit by the continued effects of the pandemic, and the second supports capital investments which will enable the future growth of our economy. One looks back, aiming to repair damage, and the second looks forward, aiming to reposition businesses for growth. First, Section 4, which you can find, as I said, on page 2574. Last year, the legislature created the Capital Investment Grant Program in Act 74. It's a program financed with ARPA dollars designed to look forward, helping COVID-impacted businesses invest in their future. Its purpose is to make funding available to transformational projects that will provide each region of the state with the opportunity to attract businesses, retain existing businesses, create jobs, and invest in their communities by encouraging capital investments and economic growth. These investments are to help our economy continue to recover and move forward. We needed to revisit this program for a couple of reasons. First, while we appropriated $10.58 million for these capital investment grants, we set criteria for this program which proved to be problematic. Second, the final Treasury rule reined in the vision for this grant program, making it a lowercase t transformational than an uppercase T. And 3, Senate Economic Development wanted to continue to invest more ARPA money into this popular and oversubscribed program. And to do so, we needed to fix the barriers to success. However, as you'll learn in the upcoming Senate Appropriations Amendment, the $40 million we had appropriated for this program has been completely cut, and with it, the program. If it reappears later in this session, I will happily extol on the many virtues of this program, but until then, I will simply move to Section 5. So, Section 5 you can find on page 2577. This creates a short-term forgivable loan program to be administered by VEDA, the Vermont Economic Development Authority. This program looks back, aiming to repair some of the damage caused by the pandemic to the hardest hit business sectors. It's designed to be the successor program to the Economic Recovery Program, which we created last year in Act 9, to help businesses which, for one reason or another, had fallen through the cracks and had either not received any financial support or which continued to be impacted by the pandemic's long tail. Last year's Economic Recovery Grant Program was funded with $30 million and set criteria which again proved challenging. The net tax loss eligibility criteria made it very hard for businesses to apply. To be eligible, applicants per statute had to have a reported net loss on their federal 2020 tax return. The size of the award, up to $150,000, was capped based on the net loss reflected in the sum of an applicant's profit and loss statement for the period between March 31st of 2020 and April 30th, 2021. Awards were calculated as 3 times the applicant's fixed business expenses for a single month in the March 31 in that timeframe. For a number of reasons, businesses found this eligibility criteria daunting. Many businesses had taken advantage of the 2020 tax extension deadline, which meant they hadn't filed their 2020 taxes at the time the program went live and could not show a net tax loss. Additionally, some businesses were able to show a net tax loss but had positive profit and loss statements. This made them ineligible. Also, we heard that the application was cumbersome, too detailed, and businesses had begun to focus their energy on reopening. So, of the 1,762 businesses which applied, only 387 completed the application, and only 128 awards were made, totaling just over $4 million, with an average grant size being $31,000. It is very clear to your Senate Economic Development Committee that there continue to be many COVID-impacted businesses which still need our help to recover. These are our hardest hit business sectors, special event companies, arts and culture. People are still very trepidatious about being in a room together, seeing a performance. Travel, lodging, tourism, agriculture, and childcare, and their needs are still very real. So Senate Economic Development chose to reallocate $20 million of the unawarded $26 million ERG money to a VITA short-term forgivable loan program. The goal of this program is to create an avenue for those hardest hit businesses to access the financial assistance that they need and in a way that fits each business's unique needs. For this, what we hope will be a final round of recovery grants. The Agency of Commerce and Community Development suggested that VITA be the appropriate administrator for this recovery support, and that as a result, grants would instead be given as short-term forgivable loans. VITA has had the experience with the PPP program and has the ability and expertise to look at individual circumstances and make decisions based on the applicant's financial statements and unique needs. This is something that quite arguably the Agency of Commerce and Community Development doesn't have the expertise to do. Also, at this stage of the pandemic, businesses still in need are often businesses which have fallen through the cracks, whose needs aren't easily understood or are simply square pegs trying to fit into round holes. If a business has its application materials completely finished and ready to go, our hope is that most of these loans, or at least many of them, will be turned around very quickly and will be experienced more as a grant. Applicants must demonstrate a 25% or greater decline in adjusted net operating income between their fiscal years 2019 and 21 due to negative impacts from the pandemic. Adjusted net operating income will take into consideration reasonable owners' salaries and other COVID-19 relief grants, small business and PPP forgivable loans, and non-cash expenses. The maximum award may be up to $200,000 and will be calculated on 6 months of eligible fixed expenses or another ongoing comparable measure of cost. The awards may be used to pay eligible fixed costs or operating expenses, but shall not use the proceeds for capital expenditures. VITA will consult with the Joint Fiscal Office to develop the guidelines and approval processes for this program. The guidelines must be approved by the Joint Fiscal Committee prior to accepting applications. And while we have identified priority sectors for the award considerations, arts, culture, travel, lodging, tourism, agriculture, and childcare, all eligible businesses will be encouraged to apply. I will now yield to the senator from Chittenden, Senator Rom Windsor.
Thank you, Senator from Windsor. Section 6 through 11, beginning on page 2579, set forth a 5-year pilot program that authorizes the use of the tax increment financing or TIF district model for smaller scale development projects in communities otherwise ineligible for the current model of TIF financing. Under this pilot program between January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2027, the Vermont Economic Progress Council, VEPC, can approve up to 4 TIF projects, provided that there are not more than 1 per municipality. This pilot program is similar to the one this chamber approved last session as S33, which has not passed in the other chamber, though with a smaller number of TIF projects that can be approved. So given that we have seen much of this language before, I will try to move quickly through the sections and only touch on things that are fairly new to this particular bill. Section 6 amends 24 VSA 1892 and its cleanup language that updates the list of TIF districts to add the town of Bennington and the city of Montpelier, which now have approved TIF districts. Section 7 amends 32 VSA 5404A. It is more clarifying language, and the new addition is that it adds authority for VEPC to adopt rules regarding a reasonable improvement for a project that affects the remediation and redevelopment of a brownfield within a district. Section 8 adds the TIF project development pilot program, and these are some definitions that are similar to the ones in the other TIF district statutes. There is a new definition in this particular bill of TIF project zone, which means an area located within a designation approved by the Vermont Downtown Development Board for the parcels that have a nexus to the project, such as an industrial park. Subsection B sets forth the 5-year pilot program and the dates, as well as the 4 TIF projects and the cap of $5 million for each project. I will skip to subsection D, which is fairly new, and it requires that a project must be located in 1 or more active designations approved by Downtown Board under 24 VSA Chapter 76A, a village center, a new town center, growth center, or industrial park, and cannot also have an existing TIF district. This subsection now also adds in brownfield remediation. A lot of this was language in S33. I will just highlight that beginning in subsection K and extending to subsection M, there are some dates for audits and reports. The forthcoming Senate Finance Amendment does change those dates, so I will flag that. And subsections N and O are simply authorization language to allow VEPC and the Secretary of ACCD to issue decisions on questions and inquiries that are administrative in nature. Section 9 adds to the definition of improvements the ability to use the proceeds of debt to pay for debt service interest payments for a period of up to 5 years. It also makes a technical amendment to the definition of financing to clarify that incurred debt may be used for both improvements and related costs. And it allows for a municipality to use bond anticipation notes for a district's first incurrence of debt, provided that permanent financing is secured within 1 year if a municipality uses a bond anticipation note in its 5th or 10th year of incurring debt. Section 10 is new, clarifying statutory language on TIF districts. When the district is created, any parcel within the district must be wholly located within the boundaries of a district. This also requires that no adjustments be made to the district after the district plan has been approved. Section 11 would set forth that instead of meeting 2 of the 3 location criteria for a TIF district, that a project be able to be eligible only if it meets 1 of the criterion. But the Senate Finance Amendment that's forthcoming puts it back at 2. So unless people want to hear what those criteria are, it is something that you'll be hearing a little bit more about in the amendment. The members now have an understanding of what is in the original bill as they consider an amendment forthcoming, particularly on these sections from your Committee on Finance, which your Committee on Economic Development viewed favorably. Thank you, and I now yield back to the Senator from Franklin County.
Senator from Franklin is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. This relates next to Section 12 of the bill, which is a Vermont Film and Media Industry Task Force Study Report. I don't know about you, but I see an awful lot of movies about Vermont, and particularly Christmas movies. You know, we're famous for Christmas and having Christmas scenes. There was Christmas in Evergreen, which was produced by the Hallmark Channel. And that was produced in the fictional town of Evergreen, Vermont. It was filmed in British Columbia. The Tree That Saved Christmas, that was another one of my favorites. This was in the fictional town of Danbury Falls, Vermont, a county town that somehow has a city council with meeting chambers more fancy than Burlington's. It was filmed in British Columbia. Then, of course, there was Romance at Reindeer Lodge. And that was also produced by Hallmark. And that was produced, the setting was in Jamaica, Vermont. It was filmed in Connecticut. And you know, we have famous filmmakers here in Vermont. We have Jay Craven. Everybody's seen Jay Craven. This movie that he's making right now is being filmed in Massachusetts. There's a lesson in all of that somewhere. I hate to go to the movies and see movies about Vermont. Or look at TV. The Hallmark Channel is notorious. In 2017 and 18, they did 6 movies that were supposedly made in Vermont, not one of which was made in Vermont. And we may be missing something. We may be missing something because one of the things that's most important about this that we're thinking about from an economic development standpoint is what a great way to advertise Vermont. What a great way to translate these settings and so on with the real Vermont, and also as a means for getting people to come here and see what really is real. But movies need to be made in Vermont for that to happen. How can we do that? And how also do we recognize that we have so many talented people in Vermont in the movie industry that work elsewhere? They live in Vermont, but they work elsewhere because that's where movies are being made. And so this study is designed to take a look at how can we change that? And how can we create what essentially is a movie industry and also an appetite for making movies about Vermont. And so this creates the Vermont Film and Media Industry Task Force. It's composed of a couple of legislators, Secretary of Commerce and Community Development, and a member appointed by the Vermont Arts Council to serve as chair and convene the task force.
Yeah, because it's not.
And on or before January of 23, the task force should consult relevant stakeholders in the film and media industry, of which there are a lot here in Vermont, as well as elsewhere, and submit a report to the relevant committees of jurisdiction on what financial and other support the state may provide in the future to revitalize the industry. Now, we've had a film commission before, from about 1995 to 2011, as I recall. And it wasn't particularly successful in the end. In the beginning, we did get some major Hollywood films done, but in the end, it sort of fizzled out. It was down to one person. There weren't any real tax incentives, at least that were active and actively used, and it went away. So what this task force is to take a look back first at the successes and failures of state involvement in the film industry in the past. What did we do well? What didn't we do well? And why weren't we successful? To look at opportunities to invigorate the industry, attract filmmakers, media entrepreneurs, and promote Vermont as an attractive destination for tourism and business development. How can Vermont differentiate and compare with other jurisdictions that seek to cultivate a more expansive film industry? And the survey of what entities in state government and in the private sector can help in this process. What opportunities do we have for employing COVID relief funds in this industry? And then lastly, a cost-benefit analysis of establishing new state financial, administrative, and other supports for the industry. Vermont is one of only 4 states that does not have a film commission or similar body. Not every state has big tax incentives. 21 states don't have any tax incentives. They still have film commissions, and they still have support for the industry in order to make the industry work for their state. This is a study to see how and if that can be done for us. I now yield to the to the senator from Chittenden, Senator Sarante.
Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I will pick up on the remaining sections of the bill. We're now on section 13, minimum wage. I would just like to read, I'm not a big fan of findings, but I think this summarizes essentially where we are with minimum wage. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused the labor market to tighten, which has resulted in employers offering higher starting wages to workers in many occupations. Supply chain disruptions and labor shortages related to the COVID-19 pandemic have caused significant inflation and increases in the cost of living for doctors. Increasing Vermont's minimum wage better align the statutory minimum wage with the actual conditions in Vermont's labor market would help lower wage workers to better afford the cost of essential goods and services. Madam President, when I first offered this suggestion in the bill, I was thinking back to 2018, where we passed a minimum wage at $15 to be effective in 2024. Just like this bill now, we're now 40 proposing the same thing. I said, I don't think it's really going to have much of a difference, make a difference for a lot of people, because virtually everybody's being paid more than $15 now. But I was concerned that we have an inflation factor in our minimum wage bill, a minimum wage law, and if we didn't make this bump now, we would be going up 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents a year. We would reach $15 until almost 2030 at this rate. So I thought it was important to do that, and I guess the proof is in the pudding, I guess, having gone through many minimum wage debates in this building, and they're always controversial. Ever since putting this bill forward, it's been sitting on our wall for 2 months. I have not got one expression of concern from anybody about going to $15. So that's essentially what Section 13 does. Section 14 is probably the section of the bill that I'm most proud of, and I want to give me a second to find my notes here. This is what we call the COVID Income Replacement Relief Fund section, and it is a continuation of what the federal government passed during the height of COVID. There was a bill, a law in Washington that passed that put $46 million into the pockets of employers to pay workers for the time they missed while they were out of work. As you know, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Vermonters everywhere have been asked to stay home and isolate or care for others in the event of an exposure. And by and large, we all have risen to the occasion, not only to keep ourselves safe, but to keep those around us safe as well. And as I said, at the height of the pandemic, Congress stepped in. That program, however, ended September 28th of 2021. And it did provide $45 million. But at the height of the Omicron surge this winter, we had over 1,000 workers exposed to COVID-19 every day. To protect their colleagues, these workers needed to spend days away from their jobs. Moreover, workers with young children experienced additional loss of work due to potential exposure, childcare, school closures, and symptoms associated with COVID-19. And for many, they had no way to make up for those lost wages. Without the federal program at businesses' disposal and profit margins thinner than ever, many Vermont businesses struggled to maintain their paid leave programs. For context, according to the Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility 2021 membership survey, 50% of their members offered paid leave. As a business community committed to people-first workplaces and livable jobs, it's safe to say that the remaining half did not offer this benefit, not due to a lack of will, but due to a lack of resources. So what we do in this section of the bill is we have provided for a voluntary program that will allow employers to go to this fund, much like they did the Essential Person Program or the Hazard Pay Program, and get money from this fund to pay their employees for missed time work where they have not gotten any wages during that period. This is a program that helps business and workers So if you were a business that paid your workers leave time during this period, you can get reimbursed for the amount that you paid out. If you didn't pay them, you can go to this fund and get money from this fund to pay your workers for their lost income. It extends through calendar year 2022. It pays 67% of the person's lost wages up to a maximum of 80 hours and up to a maximum of $27.50, I believe, an hour, which would yield a maximum grant of $2,250. So this is an important program and seems to have support from both the business community and the local community. Now, if I can move on to section 14B, this is a sequel to what I was just talking about. We're going to study the issue of paid family and medical leave insurance. If there ever was a poster child for why a state should have a paid family and medical leave, it's the last 2 years of what we've been through, COVID. The only reason why we're surviving it is because of the largesse of the federal government and giving people $600 checks, giving businesses tons of support money and recovery funds, but necessarily we face this again if we have an insurance program in place to protect it, especially if it's a pandemic that's localized to Vermont. We need to eventually get to a paid medical and family leave program. So what this does in section 14 is establishes a task force, a legislative task force, modeled after the minimum wage task force, which worked very well about 6 years ago, which has 3 senators, 3 House members, meets 6 times, and builds upon previous modeling and study that was done 6 or 7 years ago. It also, one of the points of contention in our committee was whether we should explore the entire universe of paid leave programs, including the governor's program, which seems to have fits and starts in terms of whether it's live or not. We heard a lot of testimony from the Commissioner Pichak. There's still some intent, I guess, to ensure the state employees and build upon that as a platform. So we want to look at both. I think there's a real debate in public in the literature whether you can have a voluntary or a mandatory program. I personally believe that voluntary programs don't work because of adverse selection and cherry picking. But if there's a way to do it on a voluntary basis, I'm all ears. So that's the task force. Then we move to section 14F. Last year, you will recall, there was a big debate at the end of the session about relief to businesses and workers using the unemployment trust fund or contributing to the unemployment trust fund. The final solution that was agreed upon, the compromise, the deal, the bargain, whatever you want to call it, was that there would be $300 million in savings and tax reductions to the business community, and $100 million given an increased benefit to workers. That was resolved, and I wiped my brow thinking that that was resolved. And then 2 months later or 6 weeks later, the federal government came along and said, what you did is in non-conformance with federal law. So what happened is that the $300 million that was going in tax relief went through, but the $100 million that was designed for beneficiaries did not. What this bill does is it meets the concerns of the federal government and the state government in terms of getting that money back on track. It's going to be delayed for about 8 months, but it will start paying with ARPA funds starting July 1st, $25 a week supplement, as was agreed upon by both chambers and signed by the governor last year. The next section is section 17, is a sports betting study committee. This passed 2 years ago by the Senate. It was not taken up by the House, and essentially the same language. There are some of us, myself included, who would like to move faster on this, and as recently as this morning, we had an hour and a half worth of testimony from commissioners from Wyoming and New Hampshire, how their programs work. It is still our hope in our committee that we can address what is called speed to market, how quickly you can get a program like that up and running, and hopefully time for the NFL playoff season and March Madness, because that's where a large portion of the revenue that could come to the state. You'll see in the findings here that within 2 years, we can expect $10 million in revenue that is now going to offshore companies that could come to the state. It's estimated that there's 140,000 Vermonters who are already engaging in online sports betting. It's an issue whose time I think has come. Since the last time we talked about this, it used to be, I think 2 years ago, there were 20 states that legalized online sports betting, and presently now there are 32, and I think there are 3 more that are on the verge of implementing laws. So we've now become an outlier in this. I guess I skipped over the appropriation section. It's changed quite a bit, so I'm going to yield on that to the chair of the Appropriations Committee. I would like to say that before third reading, Senator Brock and I are working on an amendment that we think will be very beneficial to the small businesses of this state. We found out that the IRS recently has blessed a workaround of a deduction that has really hurt partnerships and LLCs. The first estimate we've seen is to the tune of $12 million, and we're trying to see if we can get that studied and up and running before the next tax season. Thank you.
The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sorokin, is also recognized for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. The Senate Finance Committee dealt exclusively with the Tift section, and you'll see 8 amendments there. The first 6 are purely technical in nature. The 7th was a change we made at the request of the state auditor to give him access to auditing these mini TIFs or project-based TIFs. And the 8th instance of amendment was a correction of the work of the Economic Development Committee that were caught by surprise that was in there, and it just reverses the action of the Economic Development Committee, and the Economic Development Committee concurs with these amendments.
The senator from Caledonia, Senator Kitchell, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Madam President. The amendment from the Senate Appropriations Committee can be found on 2611. We've talked about oversubscribed, and I guess I would tell you that revenues and the requests have also been oversubscribed by many millions of dollars. And what we're dealing with here is how to make sure that the appropriations and the spending provide for both the economic development as well as the workforce development, which really are very much tied together. So in the end, first of all, I want to make it clear that the amendment does not have any impact on the appropriations in section 14 that have to do with the UI benefit or the COVID wage replacement. What we are doing is referencing and authorizing the reversion of unused ARPA funds. And then we are, as you go down through, there's $6 million to ACCD for worker recruitment, remote worker program. On 2612, tourism and marketing, the funding at that level. The COVID economic support, and we really, in the appropriations, we divided it into 2 to make sure that the $5 million to the Arts Council moves forward if another bill did not move forward, and use the same language. So we have the short-term Vita forgivable loan program at $15 million and $5 million to the creative economy grants, still totaling the $20 million. Workforce development, stating this bill does not reflect it, but it would be hopefully reflected in another bill that the Economic Development Committee is working on, H703, and reserving $26.9 million to support those workforce initiatives. The downtown development appropriation is there, as well as community-based economic development. In F is really carried really in the big bill, and we have brownfields that would be funded at $6 million. The Borac community grants at this point, $3 million, which we in the budget we proposing to move to the full $5 million as proposed, and the ESAC 802 opportunity. We also dealt with the downtown tax credits that were divided between 2 fiscal years, and that they were not ongoing. They were for the 2 fiscal years funded. So with that, the Appropriations Committee favorably as we have amended on a vote of 601. Thank you.
The first question is, shall the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs be amended as recommended by the Committee on Finance? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the report as recommended by the Committee on Finance. The next question is, shall the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the report as amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. The question is now, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Madam President, thank you. If I inquire of the senator from Chittenden, the chair of the committee. Madam President, I'm looking at section 16 and 17, which have to do with sports betting. And frankly, the findings point out why the governor placed in this year's budget and last year's budget of revenue from sports betting. This doesn't appear to get us to the revenue point. And I'm wondering, the senator gave during his remarks the idea that we would have sports betting up and running in time for the NFL playoffs, which take place in January of 2023, which would be in March of 2023. How would that be accomplished through a study? Shouldn't we look towards implementation, Madam?
Thank you, Madam President. As I believe I said, we had taken testimony this morning that would go much further than the study, but we haven't enacted any language further than the study at this point. We'll continue to work on that over the next couple of weeks and see if we can get it through the Senate and through the House. Admittedly, this is just a study at this point, and we're taking further testimony.
Thank you, Madam President. I look forward to the next bill that will actually implement.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended? The senator from Washington is recognized.
Madam President, may I inquire of the presenter of the bill or the presenter of the section 14A? It was the related paid leave grant program.
You may.
So I'm seeing on page 2596, the definition of employer, which does not include the state or the United States. I apologize if I missed this in the presentation, but would this include public school teachers or staff members? would they be eligible for the program, or did the schools not meet the definition here?
What line are you on?
This is 4. The definition of employer is where I was wondering, because it said state or United States, so not considered employers, but those employees of the state or the United States would not be eligible for the program, and I wondered if that included public school teachers.
Might take a brief recess. The answer is no.
No, not eligible, Madam President?
Are you asking to take a brief recess?
No, that's okay. The teachers would not be eligible. Might take a brief recess, please.
The Senate will stand in recess until.
Sorry, can I do hands?
Movie commission.
The Senate will please come to order. Returning from a brief recess, and I believe the senator from Chittenden had the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I learned that it's always better to talk directly to your legislative counsel than to use hand signals. Yes, teachers would be eligible to apply. It has to do with ARPA funding restrictions. No ARPA dollars can go into state coffers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam President.
Are you ready for the question? And the question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended. The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 159. We are moving over H 350. I believe there's been a request. 534, excuse me, H 534, and are moving on to H635, an act relating to secondary enforcement of minor traffic offenses, read for the first time on March 25th. It was referred to the Committee on Judiciary, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth on page 2621 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of H 635.
H 635, an act relating to secondary enforcement of minor traffic offenses.
Senator from Caledonia, Benning is recognized for the report of the Committee on Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam President. I am cognizant that I stand between you and lunch, so I will move as quickly as I possibly can.
This, Madam President, is fine.
Madam President, the bill that you now have before you came to us from the other body in a slightly different form. it essentially takes a series of motor vehicle statutes that were going to be reviewed to determine whether they would be repealed, modified, or created into a secondary offense. If you don't know what a secondary offense means, we'll use the example of a mandatory seatbelt bill that we have, or a mandatory seatbelt law that we actually had. A police officer is not able to stop you if you are riding down the road without your seatbelt on. But if you are stopped for another motor vehicle violation and you're not wearing your seatbelt, the officer can enhance your ticket as a result of you not wearing it, and that's what a secondary is. When it came over from the other body, as I said, it had a list of statutory offenses that were targeted for review. When we had it dealt with in our committee, we looked at it and realized it was a better idea to review all motor vehicle infractions and consider them, because this has not been done in quite some time, for a decision of whether to repeal them, modify them, or create a secondary offense. Your committee came up with the idea of combining all of that, and we had a very good chat with the Department of Motor Vehicles, who agreed that that was a wise idea. So the amendment that we have proposed to this body, which appears on page 2621, is something that we would like this body to go along with. We heard from Michelle Childs, Legislative Counsel, Juan Manoli, the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles, Commissioner Mike Sherman, the Department of Public Safety, Chief Superior Judge with the Vermont Judiciary, Judge Thomas Zone. Your committee voted 5-0-0, and we would ask for this body's support.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've proposed to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary. The question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 635. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Those are all the bills we'll be taking up this morning on the floor. So at this time, pending announcements, I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 9:30, Tuesday, April 19th.
The senator from Windham has moved that, subject to any announcements, the Senate do now adjourn until Tuesday, April 19th at 9:30 a.m. Are there any announcements? The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Education will meet at 1:30.
The senator from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Government Operations will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Addison is recognized.
Madam President, I move that H715, an act related to the Clean Heat Standard, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31, and the entry on the calendar for notice with report of the Committee of Natural Resources and Energy.
The senator from Addison has moved that H715, an act relating to clean heat standard, pending entry on the calendar for notice, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations pursuant to Rule 31, with the report of the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy intact. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've referred 715 to the Committee on Appropriations with the report of the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy intact. Are there any additional announcements? Hearing none, the senator from Windham has moved that the Senate adjourn until Tuesday, April 19th at 9:30. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate